Welcome to the What If audio experience. We're taking a real look inside of what it means to be successful in today's society. From entrepreneurship to family, from victories to failures, we're covering all the topics of what it looks like to create your own definition of success. Our mission is to bridge the gap from where you are to where you want to be. We may not have all the answers, but the one thing we know for sure is it starts with you. All right. Welcome back to the What If audio experience. I'm Jeffrey Jensen here with my brother Jason, and this is episode number 3. And today we've got an incredible guest, someone who I feel like we're both very lucky to call a friend, and also someone that was a very, very big inspiration and mentor to us kind of going through our entrepreneurial journey. And so without further ado, Mr. Richard Bischoff, what's going on, man?
What up, fellas?
How is it going? How is life?
Man, life is good. It's busy when you have 3 kids and you're out there working and hustling and trying to make $1 while raising a family, but it's good.
Good. Well, I'm excited to have Richard on here as well. So as we talked, Jeff and I, in our initial stories, I think a big part of our success in entrepreneurship came with network marketing. That's how we got introduced to it. And Richard was the guy that actually introduced Jeff into the business, and then took them a while to get me on board with it. And once I saw the picture, I got on board.
Wow, this guy was like, he wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah,
it was the worst. Not only did he not want anything to do with it, he made fun of us.
That's true.
While we were doing it.
It is true. This is a podcast about transparency, so that is true. It probably took about 2 years, but in that time we were involved in network marketing. Richard was a huge impact in that, big impact in our life, and I know for me personally, was just one of the first people I met to show me there's a different way, to show me there's a way to have success, to believe in that. Growing up in this area, there wasn't too many people in my life, especially in my age group, that were having that type of success. So he was a big inspiration to me. Had tremendous amount of success in network marketing, a 6-figure income, has been through ups and downs in his life, and has taken all those down times and turned around and continued to create success. And now is in the mortgage industry, where he's having a lot of success as well. And so we wanted to bring him on here as one of our first guests to not only just share his story of success, but just the entire thing. He's one of our closest friends, so we couldn't think of someone better to bring on the show. And I think to kick it off, Richard, I'd love to just, start from the beginning of sharing your story, as far as what was the turning point for you that sparked that ignition to have success. Was family a big part of your motivation? I know growing up, your parents owned a business, and just take us through, the beginning to where you are now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, just pause me when you guys want to pause me, because it's a long story.
We'll interrupt you, don't worry.
Yeah, feel free to interrupt me. But very similar to you guys, grew up in a family where parents are entrepreneurs. And I don't think that my dad got into the business he got into to become an entrepreneur. I just think he was a hard worker, and he got tired of working for other people. He always worked 2 jobs back up in Jersey, where our family is from, and opportunity came to buy a franchise, and they could either start it in Greenville, South Carolina, or in Myrtle Beach. Well, my mom's from the beach up in New Jersey, so she said, we'll start at the beach. That's how they ended up in Myrtle Beach 33 years ago. So 33 years ago, they came down here, started the franchise, and my dad, he's a worker, man. He'll work 60, 70, 80, 100 hours a week, whatever it takes. And there's a lot of kids in our family, a lot of mouths to feed. So my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad went and worked and built this business up, and eventually outgrew the franchise. So he got rid of the franchise and just came up with his own name, Healthy Home, and he's had that ever since. And so seeing that grow up, it instilled 2 things in me. One was to work hard to provide for your family, but then the other one was, do I really want to work that hard? So they say find something you love to do and you never work a day in your life. Or, and for me, I always wanted that work-life balance. I always wanted to chase that. Now, my dad was always there for us, but he was working a lot. So for me, I tried to find something when I was going through college and looking at that first job. What did I love? And for me, it was fitness. So that's kind of how I got into the fitness industry. I went to Coastal for a health promotion major, came out as a personal trainer, and kind of how that sparked was me and my dad, he wanted to lose weight. So he hired a trainer, and he asked me if I wanted to go with him. So we were both working with this trainer, and I saw my dad stroke a check for $700 for 10 sessions. Well, the sessions were only an hour. Divided it, did a little math, 70 bucks an hour.
Cha-ching.
Yeah.
Up until this point, I'd never made more than 10 bucks an hour, working, doing something, unless I was at like a restaurant. So that kind of parlayed into like, man, I want to get my license and become a personal trainer. So that was back in 2001.
A long time ago now.
Yeah, very long time ago. Pre-kids, six pack back then.
And that's kind of when you and our relationship. So I grew up with Richard's sister, but our relationship really came into play when you were training, because I just moved back from Australia. I'd gained a bunch of weight, and I reached out to you to say, hey, like, I'm fat, I need some help, and so that's kind of when our journey together started. And I tell you what, you really whipped me into shape.
So yeah, that's actually fast forwarding about 9 years, because I think that when do you come back from? Around 2009?
Yeah, probably
ish. And so in 2008, I was obviously still a personal trainer, and that's when I got introduced to that product with network marketing, which obviously, like everybody else, I said no 3 times. Thank God the product was good, and I became a customer and just naturally started sharing it. So I say I got into network marketing by accident. I didn't get into become a millionaire and sell this stuff. I'm not an extrovert until I get to know people. I'm more of an introvert. I don't like sales, or definitely didn't like sales back then. I didn't think I would be good at sales. So I wanted nothing to do with the direct sales or network marketing industry. But because I fell in love with the product, shared it naturally, and it ended up growing. So by the time, about 2 years after that, when you came to me for the personal training thing, I was making about $500 a week in network marketing. So not life-changing money, but in Myrtle Beach, that's the average income for a lot of people, $500 a week.
It impressed me.
Yeah, and that's what got you to hop on, and you're way more ambitious than I am. When you got on, you talked to everybody and their brother, and that's what took us to the next level in that industry. So I would say network marketing was the training ground to where I learned that I could do more than just trade dollars for hours, to where although I may not like sales in the sense of fear of rejection, fear of failure, because I had massive fear of rejection and fear of failure. That's why I never did it. But it was a training ground for me to do it without, starting a business, because entrepreneurship for a lot of people costs a lot of money. And so for network marketing, it was a way for me to get in, practice the skill sets, learn from people, have mentors. And then I'd say it took me probably 2 to 3 years in the industry before I felt confident in myself that I could do something. And that parlayed into confidence when, you guys shared the story when the company shut down.
So touch back on, so you were in the industry for how many years? 7, 8 years?
2008, I started in network marketing.
So then you're building up this team, this organization. If I can recall, I mean, your team was massive. We
had
lots of different countries.
Yeah, 24 different countries. We had people ordering product then, doing hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales a month of an $80 product. So that's a lot of sales. So yeah,
built up a very, very successful income, great lifestyle, all that stuff. And then kind of maybe take us down the road of, 2015. For me, I really want the listeners to get a sense of, hey, a lot of people that are going to listen to this podcast may be going through a rough time, or may be struggling to, one, be successful, but two, maybe they've had some success and they've had some sort of setback, and now they're trying to pick up the pieces and figure out, like, what in the world am I going to do? So take me kind of through 2015. You've got this massively successful business. You've got a family that you're raising, and you get a phone call, and kind of take me from there.
Yeah, for sure. So, let's start with some of the mistakes you make when you're making a lot of money, like buying cars and spending everything you make, going on vacations, not having a savings account. Because some of the mistakes I made the quote unquote failure even worse, or the downturn even worse. So you learn from those mistakes.
And not to cut you off, but that's a good point here. If you're listening, even though a lot of money was coming in, you kind of almost feel invincible. You're like, man, this is never going to stop. It's just rolling in. So it's really easy to get caught in that trap of, man, I'm making $20,000, $30,000 a month. I'm making more in a month than most people make in a year. If I want to go buy another car, if I want to go on another vacation, like, it's no big deal. And that's with any business. It doesn't matter whether you have a job or you own your own business. Like, at any point in time, something crazy could happen that may be in your control or out of your control that really causes you to have a financial hardship.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody's on here listening and they're 1099, make sure you save enough for taxes, because I thought I was paying in enough monthly, and then I get hit with a $25,000 tax bill at the end of the year. And I didn't have $25,000 saved up because I had $1,000 Corvette payment, $1,000 Escalade payment, $2,000 rent payment, and it just goes so fast. And when you get 1099, whether you're a real estate listening on this or anybody else, it's a 1099. Those taxes, we like to spend what we make. We see a commission come in for $10,000. Well, that's $10,000. Well, not really. It's probably closer to $7,000 after taxes that you got to put aside. So for me, I guess I didn't have the financial education. That's what my dad, he has his own business, but he's so busy building his business, and we don't get it in schools and stuff like that, how to save money for taxes, how to balance checkbooks, how to not rack up credit card debts in college and all that stuff. So for me, I didn't have a lot of that financial education. So I had to learn through my mistakes. So going based off of what you said, in August of 2015, I get a phone call saying that, someone on my team can't get a hold of corporate. It's just not going through. And that's super strange. So then I start trying to get a hold of corporate, can't get a hold of corporate. So then I message some guys in the company, and I get the news that the company's shut down. And so for me, we were living off of that one income. It was a great income. So we were living off the one income. At the time, my wife at that time didn't work. We had 3 kids. Our bills, I'll be honest, were too high, $9,000 a month in bills. And I have $0 a month coming in. So as a man who's providing for his family, man, it's so stressful. I've never dealt with anxiety like that before. It's like, somewhat of a failure. I'm making multiple 6 figures. Why do I not have money in the bank? Why was I so foolish with my money? Why didn't I prepare? Why didn't I have multiple streams of income? Whatever the case is, I wasn't prepared. So we hopped to another company, made a little bit of money kind of quick. And then obviously I got back into personal training. I had been retired from training for a little while time, got back into personal training to get some immediate money, got my real estate license, sold a couple houses as fast as I could, was doing kind of anything I could because I wasn't afraid to work. I just had to figure out, how do you replace a 6-figure income, especially for us in this area, Myrtle Beach, where the average income per person might be $25,000 to $30,000. So going through all that at that time, me and my now ex-wife, where there was issues within the relationship. So you take the stress of having no money and throw that onto the stress of marriage in general, but one that's already dealing with the issues. And then we separated in May. And then, so you take losing an income, marriages falling apart, and then you're fighting for sole custody of the kids for reasons that the marriage is falling apart. And you couple that with having all this debt. I mean, we had to get rid of the Corvette, had to get rid of the Escalade, had to live on credit cards for a while. So now you got 40,000 in credit cards. So what happens then? You go through bankruptcy. So you take massive life moments that any one of them will cripple you, and you pile on 4 of them at the same time. The company shutting down, losing all your income, the divorce, the fighting for sole custody of 3 kids, and the bankruptcy. I mean, there were times I would just break down. I mean, I wouldn't let people see it, but you probably did. I think with you, Jeff, you probably saw me at what quote unquote you would call my worst.
Yeah, and I think for people listening, most people would have just thrown in the towel at that point. I mean, like you just said, you went through 4 of the biggest life moments that anybody could go through, and most people, and I don't know how I would have responded to that, but most people I think would have just been like, man, woe is me. Like, the world is turning against me. What am I going to do? I've got 3 kids and all this stuff. But the thing that really makes me proud of who you are is that's not the case at all. I feel like you really dug down and said, you know what, I'm not going to let this chapter of my life define the rest of my life. And you went off and you humbled yourself to a level of, I'm going to go into an industry and start at $10 an hour, and I'm going to figure out a way to reclaim everything that I had once built. And so kind of talk about that. So you go through this crazy period from 2015 to 2016, 17-ish. And then you end up getting full custody of your kids. And so now you're a single dad of 3 with no income, living with your parents at 32. So I think when people are listening to this, success leaves clues. And like Richard said, he made a lot of mistakes that could have been avoided from having a financial education. So if you're listening to this, step one, educate yourself on a financial education. Make sure you're saving your money, you're being smart with your money. But let's put all that aside. A lot of times to be successful, you've really got to humble yourself, and you've got to kind of do what most people aren't willing to do to have that success. And so you move back in with your parents. You've got 3 kids that you're raising by yourself with no extra help from anyone except for your family. And then you decide to lock in with a buddy that you know that you're acquaintance with in the mortgage industry and kind of start at $10 an hour, and kind of tell me that story and how that kind of progressed.
So I mean, it came down to, we all have self-doubt, and, we are the loudest voice that we hear. And so at a certain period of time when I'm going through this, I'm like, man, I'm such a failure. How could this happen to me? How could I let this happen to me? And then it's like, was I a one-hit wonder? Like, yeah, I made 6 figures in the network marketing business. Can I do that in a different business? Can I do it in something so different like the mortgage industry? And so, like you said, I do have a buddy, Chris Davis, who runs the mortgage company in Myrtle Beach, Guild Mortgage. And I was actually 10 days out from closing on the house when the company shut down. And so when that happened, he reached out to me for a few months and said, hey, why don't you give the mortgage industry a shot? And I knew he made money. I knew people in the mortgage industry made money, but could I do it? And then, so I asked him, like, so how does it start? He's like, well, you got to come in. You start at $10 an hour. And I was like, what? I was like, even living with my parents, $10 an hour is not paying for me and 3 kids. And he's like, it's just temporary. As soon as you get your license, you can bump you up to $16 an hour. And I was like, cool, still not enough money. And he's like, once you learn what you're doing, you can then get in, become a loan officer and do the sales part of it. And so I was like, you know what? I got to think long-term. I can't think short-term right now. What's going to set me up for the best chance of success moving forward? So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. So instead of moving out of my parents' house, I stayed there longer. I ended up being there for about a year with the 3 kids. And in the first month, I got my license. So I was able to bump up to the $16 an hour and live large in Myrtle Beach. And so I did that. And then about 11 months in, I remember just saying to Chris Davis, like, listen, man, I got to. I have to become a loan officer. I have to go out. I have to make money again. So I started in July of 2016 as a loan officer assistant to him. And then July 2017, I became a loan officer. And really, I just took everything that I learned, all the concepts, and from not just, I mean, we learned it in network marketing, but you learn it in any sales career. You learn it from all the books you read, all the mentors we have, whether in person or through books and audio and podcasts and stuff like that. And I just applied those same concepts, the same concepts of, law of averages. I just got to get out there and make phone calls. I got to build relationships with referral partners who are going to send me deals, law of reaping and sowing. And then the whole, you'll get what you want in life by helping enough other people get what they want in life. So I started, how can I provide value? How can I go out there and help real estate agents grow their business by making sure their loans close on time, making sure we follow up, making sure we make them look good to the people they refer us to. And in my first 12 months in the mortgage business, I was able to do over 6 figures again. And for me, that was not validation in the sense like, ooh, I made money again, because let's face it, we all know people who make way more than 6 figures. They can make it in a month. So it's not the money, it's validation for myself that I could do it again. Like I'm not a one-hit wonder, or, we can do anything we put our minds to, whether it's traditional business or anything, we can do whatever we put our mind to. So that first year in the mortgage business really helped build my confidence back up into not just the industry that I'm in, but also anything else I want to do.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Sitting here listening to the story, which obviously I've known you through the whole process, but condensing it down to a few minutes, I mean, there's so many takeaways that I can see from this. Just number one, never quitting. I mean, I can't imagine not only having the peaks of having huge success and that being taken away from a financial situation, but then going through the difficult aspect of your marriage and what happened with that, and then just not giving up. I mean, so many people that went from, a normal life to 6 figures and nice cars and houses and living this quote unquote dream that the world tells us, to having it all stripped away. I think so many people would just get down on themselves or blame something, or like, oh, if the company didn't shut down, I wouldn't be where I'm at. But you just took, full initiative to take that on and say, hey, it is what it is. I've got to do whatever it takes, move back home. I've got to take care of my kids. And he never gave up. And so many little lessons in that too, which Jeff was saying, when you get into business or when you're working, just making sure your finances are good. But listening to that, it's so true. I think that so many people who don't have money, aren't making money, are so concerned about getting there, which they should be. I mean, that's step one. But you've also got to realize once you do get there, what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that income? If anyone listens to Dave Ramsey, he says it's not what you make, it's what you keep. And so there's so many financial lessons in there that, don't overextend yourself, whether it is starting a business, making sure you have enough capital, whether it's your typical job and you get caught up living, like the Joneses, keeping up with the Joneses and the cars and the houses. Nothing is guaranteed. Nothing stays forever. What goes up must come down in a sense. And it is such an important factor to live below your means. Make sure you are saving money. Make sure you are setting yourself up for the future, because to me, the biggest thing about money, I personally wouldn't say I'm driven by financial gain, but what money does is it creates freedom. And so if you do have that savings, if you do have that long-term vision, when life does get hard, and it will for everybody at some point, it gives you the options to keep pursuing what you want to do. And even though that wasn't the case first time around for you, now looking forward to the future, I just have to imagine the lessons learned, the feelings you went through, the low points. It's just creating such an awesome story moving forward that, now I can't wait to see what the next 10 years bring. And even in your personal life, going through what you went through, so many people just would have thrown in the towel, just on every aspect, just given up and just blamed the world and just sat back and said, you know what, my life is so unfair. But you just proven through all that, like, hey, you're going to go through some rough times, moving back home, what all the different scenarios that you went through, you never gave up. And like you said, yeah, you got in the mortgage industry, made 6 figures your first year, which is unbelievable as well. But even more so in that, just reinstilled that confidence to say, I'm not going to give up. I don't care how hard it is. I have kids that are depending on me. I have my life that I want to build and prove to myself that I can do it. And whether it took a year or 5 years or 6 months, whatever, you went in and crushed it in the first year. Again, it's just such a great story. It's such a real story. These are the stories I feel like people don't share, where it's easy to hide that. Even to get on this podcast, you could avoid talking about all of that stuff. And it's like, yeah, I made 6 figures in one industry. It didn't work out. So I went to another one, and you skip that middle part about all the negative things that happen in your life. But I also just have to believe moving forward now, that is the foundation and the basis to, one, hopefully not make a lot of those same financial mistakes again, but just the growth as a person. I know for me, when I went from a normal life, if you will, to living the faster life and having more money, you feel like it can never go away. But the reality of it is, I think when you go from thinking small to thinking big, it's easy to get lost in that moment and lose some parts of you that you used to have, as far as humbling yourself or thinking you're not just this invincible person who's the income's just going to grow more and more and more and more and never stop. And it's just so important that when you do taste success for the first time in life, just having that realization of keeping yourself humble, having a financial game plan, and moving forward. So it's just such a great story. It's inspiring to me, and it's great, and I can't wait to see what the next 5 or 10 years bring. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I got a few questions here. So in talking about your story and knowing you, saying that, you've been a little bit of an introvert, when you get to know someone, you're an extrovert, but somehow, how has an introvert went from, working normal jobs, starting a personal training business, to making 6 figures in sales? Where's the connection there? So my question is, being an introvert, what would you say are some big things that helped you get out and get over that fear and make those sales? I know so many people that are in sales are terrified to pick up the phone or go see that person. Like, what are some things that helped you get through that and create the success that you've had?
Yeah, well, I guess it's just how you shape it in your mind, because a lot of times you hear introvert, you hear someone who's too scared to go talk to people, and there is that fear, but you always are battling almost two fears: the fear of rejection, the fear of talking to people, the fear of failure. or you have the fear of not having success and or not being able to provide for your family. So that's the fear that's always kind of won it for me, and kind of that fear always kind of won over the fear of failure or the fear of rejection. Although that fear was real, I had to choose. So it's either I don't go out and I don't get rejected, but I also never have success. So I had to use that. But also there's the advantage of being an introvert. I feel like people who are introverts, they're not out there just going to be in your face, make the sale. So for some people, they like that more because they feel more safe, or they feel not as pressured, or they feel more trust sometimes with someone that maybe they feel more like. So I don't necessarily feel like introverts can't do sales. I feel like introverts in their brain think they can't do sales, but I think introverts have a different set of skill sets. They're just going to do it differently. And that's the one thing I learned back in sales and network marketing, is the fact that you don't always have to do it like someone else. Be your own version of success, or be your own person. Because if I tried to be you, I'm not going to come off as authentic. Now, there's certain skill sets I can see in you, and I can try to sharpen those skill sets within myself and get those strengths. However, if I just try to be you, or I try to be Jeffrey, I'm not going to come off as authentic in sales when I'm talking to somebody else. So I think introvert, has its own strengths, but it definitely has its obstacles. You got to overcome that fear of failure and fear of rejection. Just know that if you don't, you're not going to have change.
Yeah. So the fear is pretty much started your engine, got you out there, got you going. And something you said as well about, you can find certain traits in people that you want to emulate. It also just takes me back. I'll never forget the time I heard somebody, it was a quote, I guess you could say, but just talking about, the world needs more of you. And I just want to throw that in there because it's so true. And that's one of the biggest reasons we started this podcast, and just a message that I want to shout to everyone is, when Richard goes out and does sales, they don't need another Jason Jensen or Jeffrey. Like, the world needs more of you. It's great to find mentors. It's great to find people in your life that have skill sets and traits that you want to bring onto your own life. But to be yourself, to be authentic, we don't need another one of somebody else. The world needs more of what you have to offer. So that's incredible. And again, like you said, letting the fear of not doing it get you started. Is there any books or mentors or anything that someone that's listening out there that says, okay, I get it, I don't want to fail, but is there any type of guidelines to help somebody start who is in sales and they're like, all right, I'll make the calls, but some of the basic stuff, a lot of the training you got, is there anything you'd recommend to people listening?
One of my favorite is, obviously Jim Rohn. A lot of his sayings, because he was in sales, so he had a lot of those sayings and quotes that we quote all the time. So that's going to be a big one. Darren Hardy, he was always a big one because he did real estate sales, but he also did network marketing sales, and then he went on to do. So I like to find people that are kind of in the industry that you're in. So there's plenty of people in different industries. If you're in network marketing, there's tons of people out there doing trainings in network marketing. Same for real estate. So kind of find a coach in that field, that kind of parlays what you're going to do. That way it's a little bit more specific for them. For me, one of the biggest things I learned in sales, as soon as I got into mortgage, what did I do? I got a mortgage coach, because you want to be the best, you need to have a coach in your industry. So I got a mortgage coach. And one of the things he taught me, and he said one of the biggest mistakes people make is they focus on the result. How many did I sell, blah, 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 all the result, and that stresses them out, So he said, don't focus on the result, focus on the activity. So what I started to do is I started to track my results, but also track my activity. Because if you're not doing the activities, you're not going to get the results. So it's like, how many people are you meeting with on a daily basis? Who are you grabbing coffee with? Who are you grabbing lunch with that can build relationships to send you people? Because if you're not doing that, you're not going to get the referrals. So I really focused on the activity. I can't control the outcome, but I can control my activity. What do I have control over? My control is the activity that I go out there and I produce. As soon as I shift it from stressing about my results, whether they're good or bad, and I shifted that focus on my activity on a daily, consistent basis, the results just started coming in.
You probably felt happier and more fulfilled because they say motion creates emotion. So the fact that you're just going out there and you're just making it happen, it's almost like that sense of like comfortability, if that's a word. But just knowing like, hey, I'm putting in the work no matter what, like at the end of the day, it's going to happen. So this one in our last episode, we talked about having balance, and I'd love for you to touch on this. But what are some tips or advice you'd give to people about having balance, pursuing their goals, but also having kids and a family? Because I mean, single dad of 3, you're obviously super, super busy with your family. So what are some tips or just some advice that you'd give to people who are, they're trying to achieve big goals, big levels and stuff like that, but they also want to have that balance with their family life?
For sure. And you throw in an awesome girlfriend, and then that's a whole nother level of spending time with someone. And so, but she does help out with the kids, but it's just a whole another level of spreading yourself out, whether you call it spreading yourself thin or whatnot. But so I read a book by, I believe it's Gary Keller, who owns Keller Williams Real Estate, and it's called The One Thing. And he talks about that, the work-life balance. And he said, almost never, not never, but almost never are you just going to have perfect work-life balance just at the same time. He said, normally it's more like a pendulum. For a certain amount of time, you're going to have to swing it hard towards the work. You're out there building something so that once you get it going, it's like the illustration of pumping the water well. When you first start pumping, like nothing's coming out drip by drip. But then once you get it coming, to keep it going, it's just nice, light, and easy. So you have the pendulum swing to where you might not be spending a ton of time with your family because you're out there building something. And then maybe it swings back the other way and you spend more time with your family. So it kind of has that pendulum swing where, it's got to have the back and forth. But I would say one of the biggest benefits or bright sides of everything I went through is how I became such a more present father with my kids, because it was just me, there with them. And I got to really enjoy that so much more and build the relationships with them that I'm building so much more, that it's caused me to have a different outlook on success and what we view as success. And to me, there's not going to be any bigger success than raising them to become, great contributors as they get older to society and just good people and Christians. And that's really my goal. So success from a business standpoint is I need to do enough to provide a lifestyle for them. I don't want to use them as an excuse to not become successful. And I feel like that's what a lot of people do. Like, oh, I have kids. I'm busy with them. I can only do this job. I can only do so much. So, maybe they're struggling financially and they need to get a second job. And that pendulum needs to swing more towards the hustle to provide for your family, but they don't want to do that. So they're just going to do just enough to get by, struggle, not have freedom from stress and debt, and spend that little time with their kids and use it as an excuse. So I didn't want to do that, but I also didn't want to be that guy working 80, 90, 100 hours a week, chasing success and just never spending time with my kids. So it was trying to find that balance. And for me, that's what I love about sales, is that you can go out there and you can produce, and then you can have that time freedom with the kids. I didn't have to work a 9 to 5. I mean, I do drop-offs to school, pickups from school, practice and all those different things. I'm with them all the time. I don't miss any functions because I have that freedom within the sales industry.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, and we talked about this before, success is just your happiness. So it's different from everybody. It's not necessarily a monetary thing, like you said. It's, hey, if you want to spend more time with your kids, spend more time. But in the same sense, if you need to make more money for a better lifestyle, like swing the pendulum. I love the example of a pendulum. That's such a good visual for people out there of just knowing that, hey, with success, there's always going to be a little bit of struggle. And we talked about it before, failure and success is kind of like a pendulum. You've got to swing into that as well. So I love that.
Too, with that and hearing the pendulum swing, it's finding opportunities in your life where you're taking advantage of the time that you have. And what I mean by that is somebody with 3 kids, when they have the practice or when they have the rehearsal, whatever it may be, you want to be present there. But when they go to bed at 8 o'clock, from 8 to midnight, use that time, whether it's to get together the list of people you're going to call the next day or to study up on something. I think so many people look at just the normal hours of life, like, oh, I work from 9 to 5, and I have the kids, and they're in bed by 8, and then I'm tired. It's just taking the opportunity you have when you have it. The last episode I talked about, hey, if you're 18 with no kids and no spouse, you should go all in. You should take that time because it just gets harder as you go on. Everyone's personal situation is so different, but I also think with 24 hours in a day, if you're sleeping 9 hours, you can get by on 6.5, and it's doing whatever it takes until you get to that point. And just my encouragement to people listening is, if you are super busy, if you have the job and the family and you find yourself with no time, wake up at 4 a.m., get the stuff done in your day that you usually spend from 7 to 9 o'clock at night doing. Get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and get it done. Finding the opportunity to where, oh, I'm tired, I can sit down and watch Netflix for 3 hours, or I can use this time to put towards my business or my job. It's just so important because life does get busier. It does get more difficult. But like you're saying as well, I think if you can put in the effort, put in the work, and get yourself to a point to where now even in your business, you're having success. You don't have to be at the office all of the time. You can slowly start to create that freedom to free some of that up. So I think it's just putting the effort in when you can and taking every single advantage of working towards having that success. So as far as success goes, what would you say are some habits that you've instilled in your life to just keep going? Obviously, you had success, you've had difficult times, but what are some habits you've created to keep you on track, to keep you motivated and moving forward and creating success?
Yeah, well, that's a good question because, man, it's hard to be self-disciplined. I think that's probably the number one struggle most people face with being successful is self-discipline. So let's start background on personal training. So start with fitness. People, how easy is it to get in shape from just a pure logic standpoint? Workout, diet, do it long enough. It sounds so easy, but man, what a struggle that is for so many people. And even me now, not being in the training industry anymore.
I will say that your arms look huge.
Yeah, well, I started back at the gym, just haven't started back my diet.
If you're listening right now, Richard's arms look like they're going to rip out of his shirt.
Yeah, well, that's why I bought a medium. But actually, it's a large. But no, because that's the thing. Is it's on paper is so easy. On paper, to be successful financially is so easy. Spend less than you make and save your money. It's so easy when you look at it, but it's so hard to do because of the world we live in, the food that we get to eat, the stress we deal with. So you come home, you have a drink and you have a cheese plate or a glass of wine and you just ruin your diet for the day with just something so simple, but yet something that just relieves your stress temporarily. And we live in a society where everybody's buying stuff and Instagram shows people living the life, but it doesn't show probably how much they have on credit card debt and how much they're not. So it's easy to eat, it's easy to spend money, and it's hard to do the opposite, the diet. But yet, like we just said, on paper, so easy to have abs. It's so easy to have savings in the bank account. So how do you separate yourself at those daily habits? I would say the number one thing that I would tell people is to surround yourself with people who have what you want. Because listen, if all your friends are as good financially as you, Jason, you're way better than me and Jeffrey with spending money. Saving money. Me and Jeffrey, we find something we love to do. When we decided we wanted to get into hunting, we bought everything we needed for hunting. We decided you want to go golf. You got to go. You got to get a whole. We like let's become professional golfers. We're like, well, that's not going to happen. Let's look like one. So I went and I got all the Ricky Fowler stuff, and so it's one of those things that we like to make it, but we like to spend it. And you're so much more disciplined. Well, if I'm hanging out with you and everybody I know is like you, I'm going to do more like what you're doing. Same with people in shape. If everybody knows got six pack and they're going out and they're ordering a salad and they're doing this, you're not going to go get the burger when you're going down to eat. So the easiest and fastest way for people to reach success in whatever area of life, marriage, spirituality, fitness, money, business, is going to be surround yourself around people who have and are doing what you want, because those habits will kind of force you into that.
Sure. I think just as important that too is finding those people in your life. And like we've mentioned, maybe you can't find them. Maybe you haven't found them yet. Find them through a mentor in a book, on a YouTube channel. Then also just as equally as important is it's removing the negative people in your life. And whether 100%. That's your family, whether that's friends. And I don't mean do it in a bad way. You don't just decide, oh, I want to be successful and call your friends up and say, hey, you suck. We're not going to hang out anymore. But it's making a conscious decision of when you get up and you get started and you're following these disciplines and you're creating success, that, yeah, you need to separate yourself from people that are trying to hold you back. It's like the whole image of, when you take a crab catcher or whatever it would be and you put it in the ocean, if there's crabs in there and one tries to escape, the others will actually bring him back down. And I think in life it's so true, because if you're hanging out with people that aren't really going anywhere, they don't want you to get out of that, because then that's one less person in the group. That's one less friend to be around. And so it's so important to not only remove yourself from people that don't believe in you or don't have the same goals and ambitions that you have, then help find those people to elevate you as well. So that's such great advice.
Something that you said with people buying stuff and Instagram and the flashiness, and I know that we dealt with it a lot in network marketing because it is sort of a flashy type business. But I heard someone talk about this the other day, and it really like kind of shifted my perspective. But they said, what if instead of walking around with your Louis Vuitton bag or driving your Escalade or your Mercedes, what if everyone walked around and above their head was their bank account balance? And that was what everyone in the world saw. Is you saw how much more would we become a culture of savings and investing, and so that really hit me. I was like, man, that's kind of cool to think about, because no one's walking around saying like, oh yeah, I got X amount of dollars in the bank. They walk around that, I've got a Supreme book bag. But what if we reversed it and everyone that you saw just above their head was a little icon that said, in their checking account, in their savings account, blah, 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 blah. How much more would we focus on being financially educated instead of worrying about all the dumb stuff that we buy?
Right. Well, that was true in every sense. I mean, imagine if you had something above your head that said what you said to your wife that morning.
Sure.
And it was negative and everybody could see it. Well, you're going to think twice about saying that.
We should invent this.
We should invent this. You'll find a way, that's for sure. But it's one of those things that when I think about success and habits of success, a lot of it starts in the morning. You hear all these successful people talk about their morning routine, because how can you start your day? Like if you start the day and you're stressed out already, it's going to be hard to have that day turn around unless something just magically happens to you. But if you start the day off purposeful every day, like my ideal morning, it doesn't happen every morning, but my ideal morning is I get up at 6, I spend some time reading the Bible, spend some time with God, about 15, 20 minutes with drinking a coffee, and then boom, I head out to the gym. I go work out at the gym. I get home, shower, and then, feed the kids and all that stuff. And it's just one of those things that the days I don't start off like that, the days I sleep in just a little later and I feel a little bit more rushed, man, it changes the whole perspective of that day and my gratitude for what I have during the day. And I'm just stressed out about what I don't have or what I got to do. So I think morning routines, like if we're talking about people setting up daily habits, is set up a good daily morning routine, because that's going to help launch the day.
Yeah. And I think with those habits too, it's what I'm hearing from that is you almost have to slow down to speed up, and it's making sure you take care of yourself first before you get out there and take care of other people. I mean, if you don't take care of yourself, it makes it a lot more difficult to give your best to others. And I think with those habits too, just such a big part of life that can help people is finding accountability, whether that's in tracking yourself, or probably the best form of that would be find someone who has those similar goals as you want to, whether it's accountability of how many times I go to the gym, am I reading my Bible every single day, how's my relationship with my wife or my girlfriend, how's my business going, whatever it may be, all these different areas of life you want to succeed in. Having accountability is so important, but with that accountability also comes humbleness, transparency. That's something that I've really learned and kind of grown up with over the past few years is the areas of your life where you're excelling, it's easy to talk about that. Right. When you're struggling with other things, it becomes difficult. But I personally have felt with whether it's my walk with God or a relationship or a business, when you can just face those problems head on, there's something that happens when, let's say you have a negative situation in your life, when it goes from being in your head, because we know how that self-talk is. Let's say it's eating bad. You want to be healthy. You break, you go get fast food, you eat it. In that small moment, it feels good. And then after that, it's like, why'd I do that? You're never going to get in shape. It's all this negative self-talk. Something about speaking it to somebody else, not only does it relieve a lot of that pressure you're putting on yourself, but it also it brings this humbleness and this accountability. And when you have somebody that you can have transparency with and you hear their struggles in life, it lets you know that you're not alone. Kind of like you guys are saying with the whole bank account in your head, we live in such a society to where everyone just tries to put on such a perfect show. They buy the nice things. They just want to show that everything's good. But it's so funny because you sit down with people and you realize like everything isn't good with everybody all the time. Like life is hard. It's a tough world that we live in, and when you can find people to be transparent with, it's such a more of a team effort. And when you talk about those things out loud, when you face those problems head on, it makes the world of difference. You know, like you were saying, I love the financial side of things. And that was the biggest thing I learned. You know, my wife and I have a great relationship with our money because from day one, I just became transparent. Like before we got married, I was like, hey, look, here's the deal. Here's what I got. Here's the areas I need to improve on. You know, we're going to do this. Be prepared for a crazy life of adventure. Like here's my goals in life. But every single month since that point, I do like a financial review. We sit down, I say, look, here's what we made, here's what we spent, here's the areas we spent it in, here's areas we can improve. And man, that has made the world of difference in our relationship, because I feel like so many marriages have an issue with money because it's kind of this thing where you don't talk about it, you think you're good, and it just builds up, and you get to a point where you aren't enough debt or you do have enough issues. It's just a snowball effect. And not to mention, too, when you're handling that alone, I know in our society, most men control that financial side. Life gets tough. I mean, there's been times where I've sat down with my wife and like, man, we got to cut back big time. But when you show the numbers and it's on paper and you talk about it, it's so different than when you try to carry that weight alone. Things get out of control, and then all of a sudden it's too late.
Right. Well, I know for guys too. I mean, if you're the provider, the main provider, and your wife or spouse, whoever, they're seeing all their girlfriends go on these vacations, you don't want to tell them no. You know, so, but sometimes it's not a matter of telling them no. It's a matter of you guys coming together, making the best decision for the family so that you can wind up in a better situation. So, no, I definitely agree with you on that.
Sure. So last question.
Yeah,
we'll go into this is something that we're gonna start asking all of our guests this question to end the podcast, but I'll let Jeff fire away with it.
So last question, what if you had the opportunity to give one piece of advice that the entire world would hear? What would it be? I know that we really dropped that one on you.
One piece of
advice that the entire world would hear.
Well, I'll just say what was the biggest thing for me, and then hopefully that would be, you know, I would say the biggest thing for me going through what I went through is finding joy in God. And what I mean by that, I grew up in a Christian family, going to church, you know, was the good boy, you know, going through high school. It's weird. Like my Christian friends thought I was not Christian enough, but some of my non-Christian friends thought I was a goody-goody and too Christian. You know, you always can't please everybody, but, you know, you just kind of, I think, especially in the South or especially in America, you kind of just go through the motions a lot of times. Like you go to church, you have the relationship with God, everything's hunky-dory. But when your world falls apart, like my world fell apart in 2015 and 16, you learn to really count on God and really see his faithfulness. And really, if you can find joy in those times of your life when you have nothing and gratitude and realize that, you know, the world's bigger than just how much is in your bank account. It's bigger than how many friends and likes you get on social media. And you just find that joy in that real relationship that you have with God, and you let that come out through the rest of your life, you're just so much happier, you know, and you learn different lessons. So a lot of people, happiness comes and goes. You know, like, you know, if something good happened today, I could get happy. If something bad happens, guess what? I'm not happy anymore. But real joy, that's going to last and hold you through when times go down. And now, like say I'm in sales, I'm in commission. 1 month could be great. The next month could be bad. I don't have the stress and anxiety that I used to have because I know God is the provider. I know my joy is with him, and the money doesn't define me. And that is, as long as I keep doing the activities, what I'm supposed to do, the money will come, he'll provide. So, you know, we can search for stuff outside God, and we could try to find joy and success and joys and relationships. And ultimately, until we find that only solid joy that we can use that and funnel that out through everything else in life, that's when I think is true success. Peace to me is true success. Having peace in all aspects of your life is true success to me.
Phenomenal. Well, hey man, it was great to have you on. Thanks again for being with us, and super excited to watch your journey as you continue to grow and have you back on in the future. So awesome. Well, hey, thanks again for listening to the What If audio experience. This was episode 3. If you haven't had a chance, make sure you go on iTunes, leave us a review, leave us a comment. It would mean the world to us. We'll be back next week with another episode.
Bye for now.